Hi everyone, this is OGV Energy Live, coming to you live on St Andrew's Day. I hope everyone's celebrating it from Aberdeen. Wherever you are in the world, welcome and thanks for joining us. My name is Eric Doyle and this is our decommissioning edition. This is our decommissioning special. As I said, we're broadcasting here from Aberdeen on St Andrew's Day. We're across LinkedIn, we're across X or Twitter, if you still prefer that, YouTube and many other platforms, bringing you all the very best and latest news and insight from across the energy sector by bringing to life the UK's leading energy industry publication, of course, OGV Energy magazine. If you're a regular viewer, thanks for coming back. We always appreciate it, and many of you do. That's good. If you know the show, you'll know how it works. If you're new to the show, we'll explain that every month we feature interviews and discussions with our partners from across the publication and a wide range of industry specialists on the topics that mean something to us from our industry. And you have the chance to ask questions or post comments. I'm going to flip over to the chat here. Just do what these lovely people have done. Hi to Alan. Everyone gets a shout out on this show. Everyone gets a shout out. Hi to Alan. Let me just get that on there like that. Hi to Jan. Good to have you with us, Jan. Calling in from Brazzaville in Congo. Andrew Slesser is here. Graham is here, Sanjeev is here, and Tim Wiggum is here from Exceed. We'll be hearing from one of Tim's colleagues a wee bit later on. One of them is joining us. So you've got the chance to ask questions, do what these lovely people have done. Say hello, say where you are in the world, tell us what you do for a living. We're all a big energy community, and that's what this show is about. It's about us, the energy community. So today we're going to explore and unpack the very latest in the world of decommissioning and maybe track the story of decommissioning from its large-scale origins up to today. We're going to be meeting with some wonderful people at the leading edge of this space within our industry today. In our industry spotlight feature, we have our guests waiting in the wings. They are in the green room right now, hopefully not hitting the tequila and free beer too hard. We have Richard Lynn, General Manager, Decommissioning IRM and ROV Tooling from Ashtead Technology. Chris Hay, Director of Strategy and Commercial at WellSafe. We have Tony Popescu, Senior Director, Oil and Gas Service from Semco Maritime, and Callum Taylor, Performance Improvement Coach at Exceed. We're then going to be checking in with the lovely Tom Bacon from the EIC for an update on all that's going on in our markets. And as if that wasn't enough, we also have the view from the operator. We're going to be bringing the show to a close with the wonderful Donald Martin, Head of Decommissioning and Projects at Spirit Energy. What a show we have ahead for you today. Don't forget, as a viewer, you have the chance to win something special. This little chat function on the right-hand side of the screen is yours to own. You can ask these lovely people. They come to us at massive expense, so let's make them work for their money. You can ask them a wonderful question. You can put a lovely comment to them. And our production team, of which there are one, will be sitting offline looking for the best question or comment of the day. That person will win a half-page article or advert in a future edition of OGV Energy magazine. Keep the questions and comments coming in, and we will have a little check back through to see where we're all coming from, what we're all doing, and what's going on. Now, time to get this show on the road. The abundance of work forecast in the decommissioning sector is both an opportunity and a challenge. The decommissioning sector today is executing more projects and spending more money than ever before. To examine all this in more detail and put this in the perspective of the entire modern energy mix, we have two headline guests for you today that are leading the way in this sector of the industry. Please welcome, let me just get my little buttons done, Director of Supply Chain and Decommissioning at the North Sea Transition Authority, Pauline Innes, and Operations Director at Decommission, Callum Falconer. Callum is here. Hello, Callum. How are you?
Good afternoon, Eric. I'm very well, thank you. Happy St Andrew's Day.
Happy St Andrew's Day indeed. And I hear it might be a bit of a decommission night out where you might be doing a wee bit of St Andrew's.
Oh, I can't say.
Can't say, sworn to secrecy.
Sworn to secrecy, yeah, absolutely.
Welcome to you both. It is great to have you with us. I'm sure you're both still reflecting and maybe still reeling a little bit from one of the most highly anticipated decommissioning events on the industry's calendar this year, the Offshore Decommissioning Conference in St Andrews last week. I'd love to hear both your takeaways from that, and I'm sure our audience will as well. Remember, audience, best question and comment of the day wins a half page, so keep your comments coming. Pauline, perhaps we could start with you. What was the vibe? What did you experience in St Andrews, and what did you take back up the road with you?
Good afternoon, Eric, and thank you for inviting me on the show this afternoon. Before I go into St Andrews, I need to say, whilst this is St Andrews Day, we can't forget that tomorrow is the first day of Advent, and I don't know if you, like me, have got your Advent calendar at home, eagerly awaiting that 1st of December chocolate. But
I'm hoping that he's in the audience. But a friend of mine phoned me the other day when I was in Union Square and said, "Is there any chance you can swing by and get me and my future, my partner, an Advent calendar?" And I got one for ourselves. So did it. Done.
You're ahead of the game.
Ahead of the game.
and on that neat kind of note of St Andrews, back to the St Andrews conference last week. Do you know? I mean, I have been attending the offshore decom conference in St Andrews for several years now, probably more than I would like to count. And for each year I've been going, we've been talking about the opportunity and the work that is to come for in the future kind of state of decommissioning. And this year for me felt the first time that there was a real vibe where we weren't talking about that as a it's coming. It was a real conversation around the look at all the work that's happening, look at the activity that's underway, and there is more work on the horizon, but it is well understood and well spec'd, and there's clear visibility and line of sight to it. So I felt there was a real vibe this year. You know, I know we'll get on to talk maybe about some challenges around that, but for me, there was a real positivity. It was 500 people there, and you know, there for the kind of full 2-3 days of conferences. All the sessions really well attended, great vibes around the exhibitor stands. So, I mean, I came away thinking that was, for me, the best conference yet. I don't know about
Really?
you. Where were your head?
I'm going to do something unusual and agree with Pauline.
Right, stop there, Eric. That's enough.
That's a win. That's a win. Note the time and date, folks. Get it in the diary.
You know, the OE UK folks, the guys and girls there, and they put on a great show. It's super professional. It's polished. It looks great. It flows wonderfully well, and so the whole framework of the conference just gets better and better every time. And there is a very positive vibe that comes out of there. There was a lot of positive stuff coming out from Ricky in his insight report, and that's great. You know, when I've spoken since to my members, there are some chokes that we have to put in that demand curve, and Pauline and I'll probably pick up on that in the next few minutes.
So you have both been neck deep in the decommissioning space for a considerable time, as Pauline said, for as longer than she cares to remember. When you look at the event last week, yes, it was people coming together and all of that. It was technology, it was innovation and all of that. But in terms of what it meant for the overarching theme of and mindset of decommissioning, do you think we're moving in the right direction?
I mean, I certainly do. So I've been in decommissioning and in the space for 8 years, and when I don't come from an oil and gas background, so I've come to the oil and gas industry at the point of the decommissioning part of the life cycle of the sector. And when I first started engaging with operators in the supply chain, there was almost a sense of and being apologetic about decommissioning, and that kind of there was a real negative connotation around decommissioning. It was seen almost of I'm just really sorry to be doing this activity, and it felt a degree of sadness around it. And when you engaged with some operators, they would say, yeah, but I mean, I'm not going to be doing decommissioning. Somebody else will be doing that in the future. And I think that's palpably moved on. So there were so many operators at the conference last week talking energetically and enthusiastically about decommissioning. And for me, I think it's had a bit of negative connotations around it, but I can see that sort of changing, and that people can see it as an opportunity. It's just another stage in their kind of in the UK's energy transition journey. It's an important part of the energy mix, and it's an important part of the energy industry and kind of work for the supply chain. I mean, we've got 20, the next decade of £20 billion of activities come, and over 20 years worth of work ahead of us. It's vast, and people are seeing it for its challenge and engineering obstacles that are there, and great opportunities around it. So that's feeling different for me each time I go to St Andrews.
Very good. Callum, Pauline's talking about moving from that kind of almost apologetic, mysterious, like when we all anyone involved in the industry, there was a time when large-scale decommissioning the whispers started to come about it, and everyone started scratching on and decommissioning onto their business cards with no real sort of strategy or intent. Do you think there's now a mindset shift there? Did you pick up on that?
Yeah, no, well, decommission prior to May this year was Decom North Sea, and I go right back almost to the beginning. I was decommissioning manager at Marathon Oil in 2009. I think we were the first operator member, and I remember the very first Decom North Sea conference, which was in the Dunblane Hydro. Okay,
right.
And the first few conferences, and then when we got to St Andrews, we're always talking about something which was going to happen. Yeah, we were always talking about this is what's going to happen in the future. And then a year later, we were talking about this is what's going to happen in the future. And then this constant theme of, oh, we're just kicking the can down the road just went on and on and on until eventually we actually had a project, Northwest Hutton, and then we talked about Northwest Hutton for conference after conference after conference as well. And still the whole march to the right was still prevalent. Fast forward to, recently, certainly this year, we're now not only talking about things that have happened, but we're actually talking about best practice. Yeah.
Best practice.
So that, that going from it's not happened yet to this is what good looks like is happened in the last, 10, 12 years. So that's been the main shift for me, Eric. And I think you would probably agree with that, Pauline, that the narrative has changed from this is what's going to happen to we're in the midst of it now. And there's no going back, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Proper case studies, proper learning, proper progress.
Stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. You said something there which actually punched me a bit in the solar plexus, because my first ever job offshore was on the East Bray hookup.
Right.
And with some dismay, I heard that entered into the decommissioning phase, and it made me. There's nothing will confirm your mortality than knowing you were on the hookup job of a facility that's decommissioning.
Listen, Eric, I'm so old. I was on the commissioning team for Bray Bravo, the OIM, and the decommissioning team. That's when you've been around too long, right?
This is turning into the film Jaws. This is like comparing scars. Absolutely.
Yeah. I used to be handsome. Look at the state I'm in now.
He's only 26, ladies and gentlemen. He's only 26. Pauline, North Sea Transition Authority, NSTA, whatever you know it as. Please, just for any of our guests who are maybe coming from international or maybe just don't really get what it is that you do, I don't think there'll be many. Please remind us again, NSTA's role in the energy mix and your specific focus on decommissioning.
Yeah, happy to do that. Thank you, Eric. So, yeah, I suspect everybody knows a little bit about our organisation. So the North Sea Transition Authority regulates and influences the UK oil and gas, now offshore hydrogen and carbon storage industries. We focus our work around kind of three key areas. We support energy security, drive emissions reduction from UK supplies, and we're helping to accelerate the transition to net zero. And doing that, realising the potential of the North Sea as an integrated energy basin. That means that we are working with the industry throughout the life cycle, so from that initial licensing phase, and you'll have seen recently we offered 27 new oil and gas licenses last month, and we recently agreed to 20 carbon storage licenses in the UK. So we're working kind of from that licensing stage through the delivery, so for hydrocarbons, through the delivery of planned hydrocarbons, and when we get to the stage of injection with carbon storage through that phase. But we're also really keenly working with industry on decarbonising the oil and gas sector, and in doing that, meeting the UK's net zero commitments, but also the commitments that the industry has given through the North Sea Transition Deal. And we hold operators to an industry to account on emissions reductions. We're a regulator for life, not just for Christmas. So we're there at the decom stage too, just as we've been saying. And we in that phase, we work alongside OPRED, and our focus in the North Sea Transition Authority is very focused on cost efficiency and cost efficiencies. Decommissioning we'll look at over the course of the discussion today. But we're also increasingly looking at repurposing opportunities. So before you decide to decommission infrastructure, we can see that there are new and emerging opportunities that potentially some of the oil and gas infrastructure we've installed over the last 40 or so years might actually have a new life, and that new life might help support and accelerate the energy transition. So that's kind of a big part of our work as well. And you can see that in examples like Eni's HyNet project, which is looking to repurpose oil and gas infrastructure as part of their carbon storage project and storing CO2 in depleted gas fields. But yeah, so my focus in all of that mix is around that decommissioning as part of that life cycle of the energy system, and kind of that new stage in the UK's energy journey, which has got 20-30 years of offshore oil and gas decommissioning is what we're focused on now. When I look at that, and maybe when we come on to have the discussion about it, what you can see is, whilst there's kind of 20 or more years of oil and gas decommissioning, we're also currently installing a lot of, the UK's doing a lot of offshore wind installations, and in 10, 15, 20 years time, there'll be a lot of decommissioning activity from the offshore renewable sector. So when you look at decommissioning, if you slice that as part of a set of activities of removing infrastructure from the marine environment, the UK's business opportunity or industry around that is vast. So this is just the start. This is the start. This is the first set of infrastructure that we're removing from the North Sea, but it's not the last. And for me, if we can learn lessons and get that right now, and create an industry around that, I think that gives the UK a phenomenal foundation for the future.
Fantastic. We always on this show, we end up with a quote of the week or a quote of the month. We're a regulator for life, not for Christmas. Might be that to all of our guests in the green room, that's the one to beat. Callum, decommission.
No, I can't beat that. No, sorry.
Callum, decommission. You mentioned the name change. You mentioned the fact that maybe people might have known Decom North Sea, and you've now changed to decommission. What was the reason for that? And could you just cement what decommission purpose is in the energy mix?
2009, the oil operators were looking at the horizon, seeing, well, decommissioning is coming down the rail tracks. I wondered if the supply chain's ready. The supply chain were reluctant to invest, as you can imagine, because they didn't know what the scope and the timing of the decommissioning program was going to be. And so I think it was the Scottish Enterprise, Northern, there was a couple of the government enterprises put decommission together, initially funded to join supply and demand and make sure that these two were speaking to each other and understood what was going on and the timing as we went forward. That worked really well under Brian Nixon was the original chief executive. He did a great job of getting Decom North Sea on his feet, getting some traction and getting some real purpose in behind joining the operators with the supply chain. Moving forward more recently, Sam Long, our CEO, and I have changed direction. Firstly, a lot of our members have been successful in seeking and winning business overseas, and we are getting a lot of overseas companies wanting to join Decom North Sea. Why is that? It's because the basin is seen as well regulated. Yeah. And because of that, is seen as probably fostering best practice, and they want to understand what's going on in the basin. So Sam and I felt that North Sea was inappropriate. So we thought, all right, we need to drop North Sea. Then when we look more expansively, yes, international, yes, but there's oil and gas upstream. There's going to be oil and gas as we move into a post-hydrocarbon world. There'll be midstream has to be. That's all the pipelines have to be decommissioned, and all the downstream, petrol stations, refineries, terminals, everything. And then again, more recently, it felt like going back to 2009 when we started getting calls from the renewables companies saying that, we think we're going to have to start thinking about decommissioning. Can you help us? And we said, yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
And then we've got the closed shop monopoly, that is nuclear. Nuclear have decided maybe that closed shop monopoly isn't very wise. It's probably very inefficient. They spend more annually than upstream decommissioning does. And so we're trying to help them open their door so that the oil and gas supply chain can have a little look in to see if they can help. So we've gone international, and we've gone cross-industry into nuclear and renewables, upstream, midstream, downstream. So it's a more, and because of that, we thought, well, rather than just drop North Sea, we felt that the look and feel of Decom North Sea was getting a little tired and need refreshed. And so we completely reinvented the organization as Decommission.
Very good. And how many members roughly today?
We've got about 200, Eric.
Brilliant. And expanded beyond the UK, I guess, for people who are interested from the overseas.
Yeah, please do. Our vision is to have a network of hubs. Probably, well, we're beginning to build one in the Gulf of Mexico in the Houston area. We've got quite a few members there. Australia, we've got our cousins Coda in Australia, so we don't want to park our tanks on their lawns, but Asia Pacific, Brazil. And the idea is to have a hub, not that we're going to open up offices there, but to have some sort of representation in these areas so that we can foster best practices and have a knowledge exchange between. There's a lot of good stuff going on all over the world, but we want to, good stuff should be shared rather than protected, and we want to enable stuff going on. Yeah.
Good stuff should be shared rather than protected. That might be the second one. I love that.
It's not as good as Pauline's, though.
It's not as good as Pauline's. An operator for life.
I liked, the one I liked best was when Callum said the UK is well regulated. Thank you, Callum.
I love it.
I'm fully expecting an advent calendar for that tomorrow.
Pauline, when we look at your website for information, we find the glide path. The glide path is interesting, really interesting. But I'll put this to you first, but maybe a conversation for the three of us. Let me find that down for the two of you. When we talk about back in the day when decommissioning was first uttered, it was very much, everyone was frightened. It means the end of. You've already spoken about repurposing, Pauline. What is the size and shape and maybe flavor of the prize in all of this? You mentioned cost efficiencies and all of that, but if we get this decommissioning right, what is the size and shape of the prize? So
we have estimated that every year we do an annual estimate of the cost of decommissioning in basin, and we've set a target with industry to have a further 10% reduction on the kind of the current set of cost estimates that we've got. We're talking in the region of 35 billion plus is where we're looking for the cost of decommissioning in the basin. If we reduce costs and minimize the cost of that activity, what that does is it releases capital back to industry to invest in other things, but it also has an impact on the taxpayer because decommissioning attracts a tax relief. So there's an implication if costs can be minimized, then the impact on the tax burden is also impacted. So there's kind of a win-win in here. Having said that, the supply chain clearly needs a fair price for fair work, and therefore, so we're not talking about cost efficiencies and cost minimizations at the expense of safety, the environment, or driving down standards. That's absolutely not where we're at. We're talking about efficiencies to be had by working smarter. And I can see in the kind of the comments box, there's some comments about questions around collaboration and things like that. And that's where I can see like masses of efficiencies to come. It's in the way we work as a sector and as an industry. For me, it's about creating a visible, a sensible marketplace. So I look at it and think if we have a requirement to deliver decommissioning on one hand and a supply chain on the other hand who wants that work, if you can make the work visible, if you can give certainty to the market and commitments that the work will actually come to the marketplace, then you'll have the supply chain and the market kind of coming closer together. Remove some waste in that system, you'll then kind of maximize your efficiencies. That for me is focused around kind of collaboration type sets. I will quickly talk a little bit about the repurposing part as well, because there's some questions in the chat box about kind of that. So there's definitely, we can see that the vast majority of the infrastructure in the UKCS will be decommissioned. That's kind of the final destination for that infrastructure. There is a proportion of it that will have a life beyond oil and gas that could remain in the marine environment for an alternative use. The most significant opportunity for that is around pipelines, possibly some jackets, possibly some wells, maybe less so. And your saving and investment there is, so we looked at from about 100 odd pipelines that we assessed, and we said, let's say half of these can be retained in the marine environment for carbon injection or hydrogen storage, whatever. What would that do? And the effect is that would save around about £7 billion for industry. So that is £7 billion industry would otherwise have to install a new piece of infrastructure to do what the existing piece might do. And that's just a tip of the iceberg. That's just a back of the fag packet kind of calculation. It's not got the detailed technical assessment in it. So we think the scale of the opportunity for repurposing is significant, and clearly the scale from delivering decommissioning efficiently is also hugely, hugely significant.
Wow. Callum, any comments on that?
The repurposing one's interesting. In a previous lifetime, I was trying to create a decommissioning hub in Dundee. The whole idea of reuse, okay, and we've been talking about reuse, Pauline, for as long as I can remember. But now some of our members, notably John Laurie, for example, have done great things with reuse, the reuse of structure. I think the new TECA exhibition centre has been, I think its foundations has been built on steel from offshore structures, so that's great. The opportunity to reuse equipment, if you just accept that the oil and gas industry is in decline, it's diminishing in size, so the opportunity to sell equipment back to itself, if you like, is now diminishing, and there's so much of the equipment which is bespoke, exactly built to the specifications of the sizes of the structure. So that opportunity has really, it's a shame, because there's a lot of, in my simple mind, I don't know how many valves there are offshore, but just imagine there's probably, let's say, 1 million valves. So let's take 1 million valves, let's melt them down and make 1 million valves with the stuff we've melted down. That's just insane, right? So there has to be some form of sanity intervene here and say, look, we need to make sure that there's some common sense here. It's easy, words are cheap, it's easy to say, and there's a lot of people putting a lot of effort into it, but it's a hard gig, this reuse stuff. And as an organization, we've looked at this for long enough, and with limited success.
Yeah. I'm going to jump to our lovely audience who are firing in some questions and comments. Tim Wiggum has jumped on something you said, Pauline. Love the comment from Pauline about learning lessons to constantly improve. This is a concept close to our hearts at Exceed. Thank you for that. On the comment you made earlier about collaboration, a lengthy one, I think we'll get it all. Yes, we do. Alan Quirk at Hydrowell. To date, we've spoken a lot about collaboration and decommissioning. It's the most popular used term on this show, collaboration, the need to collaborate. Should we now put commitment before collaboration in an effort to protect our ability to deliver meeting industry commitments? Who wants to grab it?
I'll go. Hello, Alan. Thank you for the question. So where to start with this? So I mean, Callum raised this point already about the I stand on platforms like this and say there's £20 billion of investment to come over the next decade. We've said at St Andrews there was a vibe that the real work coming. The supply chain will still say to me, yeah, it's coming, but it's not coming at the rate and the pace that we thought it was going to. And we've specifically seen that in around well decommissioning. So for the last 2 or 3 years, we've been taking a real effort to accelerate the pace of well decommissioning. On the basis that we have a big suspended well stock in the UK. We've got commitments to deliver that. So we've been encouraging and supporting and using the regulatory powers we have where we can to drive operators to make well decommissioning commitments. The argument being, if we can push the commitments into the marketplace, then the supply chain will be there to deliver and we'll meet them. We've also been kind of saying, and the collaboration piece for me comes around if you've got an opportunity and you've got a supply chain looking for work, I can see and get cases brought to me of where traditional contracting doesn't really work, where it can, it just can be fractious.
Yeah.
And there are so many contract variations, and it gets complicated. And then you have an operator on one hand and a supply chain company on the other hand, and batting heads together and both trying to protect their own places. So what I've been trying to do with the well P&A places is hit that kind of sweet spot where saying, encouraging the operating community and regulating the operating community to deliver on their commitments, but doing that and trying to encourage a collaboration with the supply chain to say, but let's be sensible about this. It's not quite working the way I would like it to work. And last month I sent a letter, an open letter to industry to say, I'd like you to do a bit more.
Oh, I was going to read it out. I was going to read it out. Mixed thinking, I think you said, was your, yeah, I thought it was brilliant. Yeah.
So, and that, you know, from a supply chain perspective, that's about commitment. That's about the supply chain saying, we're sitting here, we're ready. Industry, you've said you're going to kind of come and commit to contracts, but it's not quite here yet. How do you know? So should we focus on the commitment piece and the enforcement piece, and more than the collaboration piece? So the answer is, I want it all, right? I'm not ready to give up on the collaboration piece.
Not ready to
but
give up
I
on
am
collaboration, yeah.
supporting commitments through using my regulatory powers where I can. So we are doing, we're looking at what constitutes regulatory breaches. We're looking at the powers that we have through disputes and sanctions to say, if someone's given me a commitment to plug and abandon a well and then not delivering on that, does that, you know, what should a regulator look to use its sanction powers? And we're actively looking at that. So it's not just about meeting commitments, it's the and. So collaboration and commitment.
Brilliant. And thank you so much for your well put question, Alan. Thank you for that. One more, maybe to you, Callum. This is from the lovely Richard Urich, who's asked a brilliant question about the whole concept of designing in decommissioning practicality from the start. So to what extent have oil and gas and now renewables? You know, you said you've got renewables operators or owners coming to you saying we should maybe now think about decommissioning. Are we now at the stage where decommissioning's in the design stage?
It's too late, probably, is the answer to that. The obvious design for decommissioning is FPSO, floating production, storage and offloading facility, so it can sail away and go somewhere else. There was never, these big structures are, the really big ones. There was no way that there was any, these things were put in with a 30, 40-year life cycle. So I'm sorry, but the designers were going, the decommissioning is not going to be on my shift, so I don't care.
I just wanted to stand up in the water. Yeah,
and indeed, when you look at some of the old contracts of 20, 30 years old, the whole idea of decommissioning was just not there. No. And so there had to be a lot of side letters put into joint operating agreements. If you remember, Pauline, when people suddenly decommissioning was coming, and the joint party was going, oh, there's nothing in the JOA about decommissioning. So we had to retrofit a lot of contracts. But there was no real design into decommissioning, I don't think, unless you see it differently.
So, I think, so I totally agree with you that certainly in the early days, the focus, probably quite rightly, was on safety, and kind of, making the platform safe and secure, and people just didn't think about decommissioning. But when we, in the UK, we started to really focus and think about decommissioning, and for those of us who work in this industry, we know, and maybe don't all love OSPAR 983, Decision 983. It's a regulation that that guides much of our activity in the UK, and it was a decision that kind of really brought to focus this question about what can be removed from the marine environment and what is just technically or too challenging to do. And since that time, any new asset brought into the basin, before there's been an installation, there's been an assessment made of, can this be removed? So there's kind of so whilst it wasn't necessarily bedding in the concept of building forward with decommissioning in mind, it's certainly anything installed since the late 90s, can be removed. But I do think we are learning from that. So there's definitely, when we do a lot of engagement with sister regulators, and that kind of is part of the kind of mantra that you put in, you learn from some of the things that we've done. And if you're building something, you must think about the decommissioning
Yeah.
before you even start. So, for example, even in the work that we're doing in the carbon storage licenses and looking at the CO2 injection, if there's new infrastructure going out there, as part of our assessment of that, you're kind of looking to say, but have you thought about decommissioning?
Sure.
You know, that is now definitely much better understood and brought to the fore.
Fantastic. We are going to cut to the next question now. If we don't get to your question live, and thank you for sending them in, we always ask all our guests to go back into the post and maybe address them, you know, individually. So that's one way that can be done, because there's some great stuff coming in there. As it stands right now, Callum, you mentioned international work. Now, that international decommissioning work might be dragging away the UK supply chain to become interested in working overseas on long-term work. Does that cause us a bit of a problem with skills in the UK? Does it leave a gap?
I think there's a few things here, Eric. So the takeaway from New Zealand, so the stewardship survey the NST do, it's sent to Oil and Gas UK. That data is put in a OEUK wrapper and presented as the insight report, and it's essentially a demand curve. Okay, so and that's the thing that we get excited about, and then we saw this 2 billion a year, year on year for the next 10 years. There are a few things that are going to get in the way. OSPAR, Pauline mentioned that OSPAR, the decision 98.3 is now 25 years old. Two sides of that coin is you could argue that the technology now exists to take everything out, rather than some sort of derogation. The other side of the argument is we've had 25 years of looking at the environmental positive impacts of man-made structures in the North Sea, and there's an argument to say we should be leaving stuff behind. So but we're not going to get into that debate, but it's certainly throwing in a what if into this demand curve. We've got the supply chain being distracted overseas by decommissioning activity, but also into renewables installation. You know, one could argue that they're going to get scopes of work which are longer duration. That means their utilization of their kit is higher. They like that. Is it higher margin and lower risk? Possibly. So there's another threat to the demand curve. We've got tax changes. We've had the energy profits levy. We've had the autumn statement. So again, what's going to happen there, guys? And at the moment, there's an NSTA consultation paper, which I think closes today, Pauline, and that's all to do with decarbonisation, reduction of emissions, which we've all got, whether you like it or not, we've all got a moral obligation to do that. But some of the you know, what it does is that it gives operators, it mandates operators to put a plan in place to decarbonise, and also put different metrics into their economics. That can change COPs forward or back. So there's a few chokes to put into this demand curve, not just the international piece. But if the supply chain, the thing that we're trying to avoid is that the supply chain moves somewhere else, because then when the demand comes, the market overheats, and then all the hard work we've been doing to get the cost down just evaporates.
You know, and I'm really selfish about this, right? So I want a really efficient supply chain to deliver decommissioning in the UK. I want them, you know, if we can get it, use that as a baseline and a basis, then there's massive export opportunities that can kind of come off the back of a UK delivery. But clearly, we have to deliver, and we have to have the work there, and the work has to come at a rate that the supply chain can kind of cope with and deal with, and that kind of, so that pushing the regulatory piece to make sure that operators deliver and continue to deliver is a critical part of it. There's an age-old story kind of. This is one of the emerging themes that we're having when we talk at conferences around whether or not we have the resources and the skills in the UK, or whether they're being attracted overseas. And it feels to me we're at a bit of a crossroads here. And there is a risk that people are attracted overseas. There is a risk that we don't attract sufficient new people into the sector, as some of us reach an age where we might be thinking about life beyond work. So, you know, there's definitely an age profile from the traditional oil and gas industry that works against us here. But I see these as like phenomenal opportunities. So there's real opportunities for a huge UK investment and huge UK work to come. That can be a great platform for exporting kind of overseas. And clearly, wouldn't we all want UK businesses to be attracted to global work, but I want that and not or. So I want that in addition to the delivery here, not instead of the delivery here. So I think there's the part of the work that we do with industries like Decommissioning and McCallum is to say, what can we do to make this sector attractive and to tell our story in a way that attracts people, investment, skills, and companies to the UK. I think we've got a real positive story to tell. So there is a risk, but I'd rather see it as an opportunity.
Yeah, again, we've gone and gotten ourselves two lovely headline guests that could do a couple of hours on this topic, and we've come to the end of our segment, which is kind of ridiculous having people like you and you're standing in decommissioning on for half an hour, but we've done it. I'd love to do this again sometime and get deeper into it. It's been an absolute joy. Thank you so much for all of the questions that have come in. And if you want to extend the conversation with either Pauline or Callum or both, their names are there, their companies are there. Simply reach out and connect with them and extend that. For now, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. It's been short but very sweet, and we really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Pauline and Callum. See you later.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Wasn't that great? Wasn't that absolutely fantastic? We are now moving on from our headline guests, which I hope set the scene for where decommissioning is today. We're moving on to our headline guests. We are going to drop in on, if I can get my little grading right here, if I can find them. Let me find. We have got Richard Lind from Ashtead Technology joining us. Hello, Richard.
Good afternoon, Eric.
Great to have you with us. And we've also got Chris Hay from WellSafe Solutions. Hello, Chris. How are you doing?
Hello, Eric. How are you? Hi, Richard.
Brilliant.
Chris.
Weren't Pauline and Callum a great scene setter for what's going on in decommissioning today?
I think the bar has been set very high, Richard. I'm pretty nervous. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I just think we should just go to the pub instead, Chris.
Just go to the pub instead, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Richard, I'm going to start with you, if that's
sure.
okay. I'm going to start with you. Ashtead Technology, a name that's been around. Anybody who knows the industry, we've known Ashtead for a long time, right? A well-recognized name in the sector. For those who maybe haven't heard it, of which there are probably a few, can you give us a wee bit of a reminder of what you're known for, what you're doing in the energy sector, and specifically what you're doing in decom now?
Yeah, no problem at all. Ashtead Technology is fundamentally a subsea equipment rental solutions services company that got really based upon the survey robotics product service line from there. And then over the years, went on to do the asset integrity and mechanical solutions part of the asset technology portfolio, which I fall under, which is called Mechanical Solutions based in Thainston and Inverurie. And that has really evolved over the years since the acquisition of the old UCS underwater cutting solutions business in September 2019. And then from there, from the great work that the team done there, we've evolved our product service offering over the years since then. That's been with, through acquisitions, through, organic growth, through identify the gaps in our product portfolios to really build up a really good decommissioning portfolio that we offer to the supply chain now.
So was the decommissioning entry into that market, was that something that just because you're good at what you do, you were called in to do it, or was it a strategic play?
It was an absolute strategic play for Ashtead to get away from the total box rental type organization they were. So they were getting a decommissioning, start with the service, really building up in the service portfolio, and the mechanical solutions product service line is now the largest part of the Ashtead Technology Group now. From that point of view.
And building on what Pauline and Callum said earlier, one of the great things about St Andrews was the fact that we're not talking about what we want to do in future. We're actually talking about what we're doing now. And you've got some, hardline experience of this. You've been busy. I think the Victoria project is a sort of case study for you in sort of complete decom solutions, right?
Yeah. I think that's a good point. I mean, I was at St Andrews myself last week, and I concur about what Pauline and Callum said. I thought it was excellent. And before I've been one of the skeptics that it become a talking shop, and you had nothing really to go back to your organisation with. You just went down, and but really this year I did feel we got a lot more out of it, and a lot more feel good factor from that. Yeah, and I think talking about some of the words I picked up from Callum and Pauline there, best practice, cost efficiencies, reduced carbon footprint, that lead us into what we done the Victoria project this year. It was with one of our main partners, a tier 1 vessel company we do a lot with. We took that project on board. We looked at so the biggest thing for me is the early engagement, Eric. So get early engagement, you work with them, you work on the solution, and then from that side, we were able to minimize the amount of equipment that you have on board. You look at the methodologies, you understand lessons learned from previous projects, you feed all this in, you do trial cuts in your premises before you go, for example, and then through the investment Ashtead does is that they can come to one supplier for the whole supply. So when you start looking at as a project over 27 days, the experience of our direct customer, what they've got working with the end client and working on that whole subsea infrastructure package solution just brings everything that everyone says before that Callum and Pauline were speaking about.
Very, very good. So specific issues that you've learned along the way. So you're refining your offering. Ashtead Technology have been known for having a very healthy acquisition appetite. We even got some news today on the wires that your latest acquisition, Ace Witches, is joining the Ashtead Technology fold. That's exciting. Congratulations on that. But one of the things that I'm interested in, because I believe that it might have a lead into your decom scope, is you're bringing higher tech into the Ashtead world. Must have been, a huge sort of boost to your decom an offering.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, when you look at the strategy that we do at Ashtead regarding acquisitions, it's not more of what we've got. It's what can add to the portfolio and what can add value to that from that side of it. So higher tech was one that, when we looked at it, it was the complementary strengths and services that they offered to their portfolio that we can do to allow us be that one supplier. It's all within your own control, for example. So that brought all the back deck, all the auxiliary equipment that basically operated all the equipment. And ultimately, Ashtead was one of Higher Tech's major, customers.
Right. So fitted beautifully.
So it just fitted so strategically in what we do. And then the announcement on the Ace today is exactly the same thing. It's very complementary to what services that we do to the mechanical solutions product service line, and adding in a bit of global customer base to us as well.
Totally. All fits together. It's a beautiful story working out there. We're going to jump over to Chris now. Thank you so much, Richard, for that insight into what Ashtead's doing in that space. Chris, we talk about 6 degrees of separation in the world, right? And you and I have probably walked back to back in many rooms in our lives. I think we've used to work for the same company at one point.
I thought we weren't going to talk about that.
What else are we going to talk about? I'm particularly keen to mention in our little pre-meeting that we had, we do rehearse some of this, folks. It's not just completely off the bat. I spent 10 years of my life on the Ocean Guardian when it was with Diamond as a drilling rig. Wellsafe have taken the Ocean Guardian, a unit that I love, a facility that I love, because I spent 10 years offshore in one facility means you're 5 years actually present on it. And there's a case for when a rig reaches the end of its serviceable life that it might just get sent off to be made razor blades. But you took the Ocean Guardian and you thought, right, we're gonna take this, and we're gonna take this this drilling rig and convert it into a sort of best in class Wells P&A vessel with diving and all of that. That is amazing thinking. I love the Guardian. I've got a t-shirt on underneath that says that there. So I just wanted to get that out there. We have a 6 degrees of separation with the Guardian.
Absolutely. No, and it's been quite an exciting time for us in the business, because specifically regarding the Guardian, we're just in a process where we've done our first manned test dives, and we're about to put the rig to work on our contract for Repsol We completed the first phase of that earlier in the year, and then we've obviously went to install and test and commission the dive system. So it's quite a poignant time in that evolution as well. And we're just getting the rig to work. And it's new guys, as you say, with a saturated dive system, so perfectly suited for old wells which were installed without ROV interface, and kind of hence the reason they need that diver manipulation. And then the same, we have a lightweight intervention system on the rig as well. So wells with fatigue issues, which there are many in the North Sea, is a big challenge in terms of aging infrastructure. And yeah, as you say, the Guardian was one of our, or is one of our 3 assets currently. And it was really to have a bespoke well abandonment, well decommissioning unit in mind. So yeah, it's been quite an exciting time for us in the company to get that asset to work and start doing what it does. And the diving will commence very, very soon in the coming days and weeks.
If you were trapped in a lift and someone said, "What's WellSafe all about?" What's your 30-second elevator explainer?
I'll try and keep it brief. And we're quite not a complex organization, but in terms of trying to just kind of distill it down, we're essentially a solutions-based company. That's the first thing to say. We are focused on well decommissioning, or our vision is to be the well decommissioning partner of choice. We own rigs, but we're not a drilling contractor. We don't chase any barrel adding activity. We've got engineering, but we're not a well management. We manage well services, but we're not an oil field services company. We are a company that kind of builds on all those constituent parts to deliver what could be a fully outsourced integrated solution, what we call our tier 1 model, everything right through to engineering study or engineering provision and everything in between. We recognize that it's about the solution. It's not about deploying a WellSafe rig. If it's a boat, if it's a land rig, if it's a modular unit for platform abandonment, that is the right solution. And that's what we'll always strive to put in place for our clients. So yeah, really focused on being a solutions provider, Eric. That tier 1 package is important to us, but it's not all that we do. And we try and be flexible and scalable to the client requirements.
I love that. Love it. Flexibility is key. You don't have to look too far into WellSafe news to notice your celebration around, and it's in the public domain, around your BP's Global Master Frame Agreement that you've now got for well engineering and decommissioning support. How did that feel, landing that, and what is the kind of scope of the agreement? It's very exciting.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and thanks for that. I think we got that out on the first day of the decommissioning conference last week, so we're really, really pleased in terms of the timing there. And as you say, it's a master services agreement for provision of well engineering services. And we've been working with BP for over a year now on a number of different scopes. And to be honest, it kind of highlights this solutions-based approach that I talked about before. So, just some examples. We've done some previous well engineering and operational support on the Cape well abandonments, which was subsea wells, which were performed off of a jackup, which wasn't actually our rig. It was a Noble jackup. And we were doing some engineering on clear subsea wells, which is kind of early in the feed select into define phase, which may or may not be done with one of our assets further down the line. And we're looking at some platform well abandonment as well, which currently we don't have platform assets in our kind of portfolio. So it gives you an idea of the different scopes that we work on, and this kind of agreement enables. And to be honest, it's for a relatively small and new company that that's growing rapidly. We're over 400 employees now, 3 assets all working, but it's been a long road, 6 or 7 years to get there. It's kind of testament to our engineering teams and the teams that we have in here supporting the business, but also the trust in our clients. Richard talked about some of his as well. The trust that they put in us to deliver, which is is quite amazing. So all we can do is continue to try and keep delivering on these scopes and hopefully build those up to scopes involving assets, managing third-party assets, further engineering scope. So yeah, regional agreement at the moment focused on the North Sea, but obviously given BP's portfolio, we'd like to think that there's opportunities to grow that even further.
Congratulations to you all at WellSafe. That's brilliant, and wishing you all of the greatest of project successes. On the face of it, from the outside of WellSafe, looking in, given what it is that you do and how you do it, you could be perceived as being a kind of innovator disruptor, right? Perhaps not choosing obvious paths to do what you're going to do. With that innovative mindset, I have a feeling that there's maybe a grand plan on the boardroom table, and I don't know how much of it we can tease out of you just now, but I have a feeling you're not going to be standing still for much longer.
No, at the risk of getting sacked, I'll try and kind of not share too much, but I think important to kind
Come
of
on, no
share.
one's listening. No one's listening.
You normally need to give me a few years to start sharing the secrets. But no, happy to kind of share a little bit about, the vision and the growth strategy we've got in place. In terms of assets, we always want to try and grow that portfolio where it makes sense. And I think, we would like to think there's still opportunities there in the North Sea to continue adding to that portfolio. We've got 2 semi-submersibles and a jack-up now. Thankfully, at this point, kind of right now, in fact, we're at a position where they're all 100% utilised. And anyone who's owned assets before knows how important that is to have assets out and working. So that's been really pleasing. But we do see there's opportunities to continue to grow that, particularly when you look at some of the data from the OA UK report. Just looking at subsea wells, I think there's over 700 subsea wells to be decommissioned in the next 10 years. Rough maths, if you kind of say 70 wells per year, that's about 5 full-time equivalent rigs, of which there's only 9 semis in the North Sea as it stands right now. So with operators getting back to drilling and rigs coming more back into, I guess, activation and contract, we'd like to think there's opportunities there to add to that portfolio for a workload ahead. I think as well, international growth is important to us. You'll have seen as well, we opened up our Perth office, so we've got a general manager and an operations manager down there. We've been successful in being awarded 2 engineering scopes pretty quickly off the bat, so that's been really, really pleasing for the business. And essentially, we'd like the North Sea to be a blueprint for Australia and wider Asia Pacific as well, and eventually get to that point that we can provide that tier 1 solution for those clients that want and need it as well. So we're on that road now, which is really exciting. And I think the other sort of area, that the land market, we talk a lot about offshore here, rightly so. It's a huge market, highly complex, and it's our kind of big challenge in our backyard, if you like. But further afield, particularly kind of Europe and other parts of Asia Pacific, there's a huge land market that we would like to be part of as well. Completely different strategy, assets, challenges there in terms of logistics and societal and social aspects as well. So that's something that we're working towards in terms of penetrating that market. So yeah, those are some of the things that we're trying to pursue and on the road to do that in some cases as well.
Well, it's a wonderful story from both of you. If our wonderful audience, if you have liked what you've heard from either Richard or Chris or both, please reach out. You can see their names and their companies on there. Connect with them on LinkedIn, give them a phone, send them an email, send them a telegram, whatever it is. We've enjoyed listening to you, and we wish you all the best of successes in what you are doing moving forward. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We will see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. All the best.
Thanks a lot. We are now going to tune in with the second part of our industry spotlight. We are going over to Esbjerg in Denmark. We are tuning in. Hello, Denmark. Hello, Denmark. Are you with us? Tony Popescu from Semco Maritime. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Eric. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. And we are also going to bring on Callum Taylor from Exceed. Callum, how are you doing?
I'm well, Eric. How are you?
Brilliant. You said that without moving your lips.
Oh.
I think we have a slight delay, but that's okay. That is absolutely fine. Thank you both for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed the show so far, because you've been sitting in the lounge listening to it. Any learning or anything that's caught your attention from any of our guests so far?
Yeah, I think for me, what Pauline was saying about collaborating to really drive efficiency, throughout the supply chain is something really important. And like Tim said in the comments, something close to our heart at Exceed. It's really what we're here to do.
Yeah, very good, very good. I'm going to shoot over to Esbjerg. Tony, is it okay if we come to you first?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
thank you.
Semco Maritime, 40 years in business. You don't get to 40 years in business without being pretty good at what you do. For those who may have missed the news on Semco Maritime, can you just give us the kind of 30-second elevator speech of what Semco is all about?
Yeah, Semco is delivering EPCI solutions to the oil and gas industry, and also now has an extra leg with renewables. So that's primarily wind and also Power to X. We do electrical engineering, maintenance, structural engineering, and maintenance, and also has dipped our toe into decommissioning now since 2019, and have a dedicated branch for decommissioning purposes now. In that aspect, we've done roughly 2 larger projects per year, and now have ambitions to use that experience into the UK market, where we also have a presence in Aberdeen, where they're overseeing the general maintenance contract for Total in our PBS consortium there. So and spread over in also in Taiwan and in the US in various locations around the world.
Wow!
But for this decom, it's our main topic now in UK, along with the GMOG contract.
And when you say 2 large projects per year, specifically, what is your sweet spot? What are you actually delivering on these projects? Tell us the kind of things that you're doing.
What we have done successfully now, and successfully here, I don't mean without slight delays, but successfully, because it is a learning game, and it is also why we have these groups and conversations and knowledge sharings across, which I think is great. I was also in St. Andrews last week, and will be next year as well for sure. So it's a massive learning curve when you start out with this kind of project base, and we do have the luxury of a legacy as incumbent supplier for all the Danish operators for Norm and Mercury and tank and vessel cleaning and decontamination for nearly 20 years now. But Decom is a different size. So what we do is IHM reporting, so to map as well the hazardous materials. We do the actual mapping on and offshore for Norm and Mercury and benzene and other waste in the process and tank regime. And then we do the decontamination, and we deem it clean for recycling when we're done. So it's a very specific niche operation that we offer here. Yeah.
Very good. So already some active Danish-based experience, looking to move that forward internationally, and you've already got your colleagues over in the Aberdeen base and further afield. You mentioned something earlier which I found fascinating. You used the term pop-up yards. What does that mean?
It's just you can say the popcorn mind when we're talking about business development and also tapping into to decommission and OUK's arrangements there and our talks in general in UK, that there seems to be a very good opportunity to do a match between operator preferences, port capability, and the recycling capability. So to demonstrate what I'm thinking is Port of Aberdeen have a bunch of certifications. They're ready to take on recycling competencies. So if you have a project, you can land it there, and you can group your expertise for that specific project, send it there, like Liberty has done in Port of Kishorn. So I think it's a very interesting opportunity landscape that UK is actually providing, if we can sort of shuffle the competencies and shuffle the so we don't get any bottlenecks, because capacity will be on the agenda as well.
Yeah, a premium.
Between heavy lifters and yards, recyclers, and what we do, and also for what WellSafe is doing. So I think there's a room for everybody here, and I think there's also room for some good partnerships when we talk collaboration.
And some new thinking. Wonderful. Pop-up yards, one of my favorite things I've heard this year. I don't know why, it just tickled me. I thought it was brilliant. Tony, thank you so much.
I'm honored, Eric, since we're at the end of the year. So
yeah, exactly. We're at the end of the year. It's brilliant. Thank you, Tony. Absolutely brilliant. Please reach out if you like what Tony was saying. Please reach out. It's Tony Popescu at Semco Maritime. Callum Taylor from Exceed. It's good to see you. You have a phrase that you use. You talk about the big bow wave in decommissioning. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, we heard earlier about the amount of suspended wells we've got in the North Sea, and they're going to need plug and abandoned in the future. it's soon now. That's kind of what's coming. But then, for other reasons as well, we've got a lot of fields coming to COP a little bit early, and that's presenting a massive challenge for our clients. Supply chain issues, data and reporting issues, and we've got not a lack of experience, but experience that's spread really thin. And that's kind of where we come in, providing a dedicated performance improvement process that's very deliberate about planning and learning. We see our clients have got a lot of competing priorities just now. So, they're being asked to produce more, meet net zero commitments, but then we're also having to decommission infrastructure as well. And that's got to be done compliantly, safely, and on or under budget, potentially. And that's where we come in with our performance improvement solution, to really accelerate learning, and use our proven process to really help teams at the rig site.
So it's about teams, it's about performance, it's about coaching. You've been doing a fair bit. This isn't just an aspiration for you. You've been kind of active in the decom world over the last 7 years. What, from the performance coaching perspective, lovely, because it's different to what most people are here talking about, which is, big, heavy things, cleaning up, cutting, and all of that. What are the key takeaways for you in the last 7 years?
I think for us, what we've seen is the people that are really committed and deliberate about continuous improvement seem to be really successful. They don't just let it happen naturally, to really accelerate that learning cycle. We're entering a kind of new phase of the oil and gas industry. We've got lots of new kit, and we've got people that are pretty stretched. So those that are really good at planning, so getting ready for execution, which is something that we help them with, really listening to their teams, doing their advanced planning at the rig site before each phase, making sure all the offline preparation activities are done so operations run really smoothly. When we come to do them, these kind of things are all really important and have to be really deliberate. And then what's even more important is learning lessons after that. Yeah. So, we're talking about bringing the team together to have a lessons learned session, capturing those lessons, converting them into actions, making sure that, teams are liaising with the beach, getting these things actually put in place, put into work instructions and programs for the future. And that can be shared with suppliers and people onshore, and dare I say, other people within the industry to try and share a bit of learning. So companies are deliberate about that are excellent, and seem to be reaping the benefits. And even things like we've got our Work Smart initiative, so we spend a lot of time garnering ideas from teams offshore, reviewing them. And seeing those ideas through to implementation, so we can really try and drive
feeding it back into the system.
Exactly.
Awesome. Wonderful bit of insight into what you're doing, and we have this decommissioning flavor of today, and it's great to see so many companies active in the space. If you like what you heard from Callum, Taylor, or from Richard or Chris in our previous section, please reach out and get in touch with them and extend the conversation. For now, gentlemen, it's been a joy. Thank you so much. And we will catch up with you later on. Thank you very much, Callum. Thank you very much, Tony. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. I have a question for you. Where are you going to be? Where are you going to be on the 14th of December? Before we go to our next segment, we have our next guest standing by. I hope that you are planning on joining us at the now famous, the now infamous OGV Energy Christmas Quiz. It's a fantastic event. We're back with an even bigger, better festive challenge for you and your entire team, hosted by myself and the amazing Andy Mackay. Food games, delicious food, prizes galore. All you have to do is I'll put the link up in a second, go to our events page, and if I can get that off, let me see, I'll hide that, and I'll put this on instead. If you go to our events page, you will see the Christmas quiz. You can sign up, get yourself a team in there, and have a fantastic night here in OGV Podium. And great food, great prizes, great fun, and a proper quiz. So you can tell everyone that you won and you can be the winner. If Steve Aitken from Intelligent Plant is out there, I know that he's putting a team together of boffins and is aiming to win it. So if you want to put him off, enter, buy some tickets, head along, and we'll see you there. Thank you very much for that. We are moving now to the, let me just check, the Market Watch section of our show. And we've got a new face with us, not a new company. We've always got someone here from EIC. But I'd like to welcome for the first time on our show, Tom Bacon. How are you doing, Tom?
Good afternoon, Eric. I'm all right, thank you.
That voice was destined for podcasts. Destined, absolutely. You need a podcast. You definitely do, Tom. We need to work it out. We should work it out after this.
I'm not sure I've got the face for a podcast. Maybe radio, but
maybe radio. You've got the voice for radio.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's brilliant, and we love having our market watchers here. Tom, have you got a focus on decommissioning with EIC?
Yes. I'm the operational assets and decommissioning market intelligence manager. Yes, so bit of a mouthful. My job title now.
I like it though. It kind of fits. What are you seeing as the established upstream industries globally? What would you say?
Well, I think most watching are aware that the UK and the USA have the most mature industries globally. I think according to our databases, there's about 3,500 offshore fields globally, and just over 600 of those are located in the US. Another 500 located in the UK. But there are 76 other countries globally that have an offshore industry. The North Sea has almost 1,000 fields. Obviously, I've mentioned the UK. Norway have about 250, and the Netherlands also have 170, roughly. So Those two, very well established. I think Chris from WellSafe mentioned about looking at Asia Pacific. Those are also they also have some well-established countries in offshore oil and gas, about 1,000 offshore fields in the region, with a majority of those across Malaysia and Indonesia, about 300 and 230 respectively. I think first fields there came online, Malaysia sort of back in the mid-1960s and Indonesia early 1980s. And then I think as well, I'd mention Africa, not as established as previous industries that I've mentioned, but Angola and Nigeria have got about 100 fields and 80 fields respectively. Both these countries have had fields online since 1960s, mid 1960s.
And from your analysis and your studies, does the decommissioning match the size of the industries in country? So where are we seeing the hotspots for decom activity globally?
I would say, following what I've just mentioned, a lot of activity in UK waters. Over the last 3 years, about 38 offshore fields have begun the decommissioning process, 8 of those being offshore UK. And then if we look wider to the North Sea, a further 5 have been offshore Netherlands, accounting to just less than a third of decom activity globally since 2020 has been in the North Sea. I suppose following what I said about those mature basins, you'd probably think the US has had a fair amount of decommissioning activity, but only one project has begun decommissioning in the last 3 years.
Wow.
That's according to the databases that we have at the EIC. But I suppose the one where we've seen a lot of decommissioning activity, especially since July 2021, has been Brazil. Similarly to the UK, they've had about 8 projects and they're currently being decommissioned offshore Brazil. 6 of these by Petrobras, 2 of them being FPSO related. I would name some of the projects involved, but I've gone down that alley before. I think I've done a presentation on offshore wind. I was trying to mention a couple of Vietnamese, and
Don't even try it. Don't even
yeah,
try.
I'm not gonna go there.
And of course, there's this project.
Oh.
Yeah, one of those. That's really encouraging stuff. Where do you see? There's lovely people in here from across the supply chain. Where do you see as the future opportunities for the supply chain from a market analyst perspective?
I think, yeah, there will always be opportunities in the US and the UK. I hope that comes as music to Pauline's ears, mentioning there's plenty of work left in the UK. The UK has almost 100 fields that have been in production for at least 30 years, and a further 150 between 20 and 30 years in production that are yet to see any decommissioning work. There are also 150 fields still operational in US waters that have been in production for at least 30 years.
Right.
But aside from the UK and USA, once again, I'll move back to Asia Pacific. This is where we've also seen increased interest from our members using our databases. Decommissioning projects in these countries are getting more views than anywhere else in the world.
Wow.
Malaysia, as mentioned earlier, is the largest Asia Pacific offshore industry with roughly 300 operational fields. They currently have 2 active decommissioning projects and have decommissioned 2 projects previously, but have 22 fields which have been operational for at least 30 years and a further 20 that have been operational for about 20 to 30 years. Indonesia as well, the next largest industry in Asia Pacific, with 230 fields. Past decommissioning has been minimal, like in Malaysia, 3 active decommissioning projects and 2 fully decommissioned, but similar numbers to Malaysia again, with many fields operating for more than 30 years. But going back to Chris again from WellSafe mentioning Australia, this one seems to be the most popular region at the moment, and currently has 12 active decommissioning projects, 4 fully completed decommissioning. But this has been pinpointed as the next opportunity because of a lack of supply chain in the country and the ease of business to work there. In terms of numbers, there are only about 10 fields which have been operational for more than 30 years, and a further 16 that have been operational for 20 to 30 years. But as I mentioned, this is where members have been interested in and seems to be the next big opportunity for the supply chain.
Very good. Thank you so much. If you're sitting in the audience and you're excited by all these numbers and this data, please reach out to Tom at the AIC, who would love to have a conversation with you about all things decommissioning and beyond. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing some of your insight. Fascinating stuff. Tom, we will catch up and hopefully the powers that be at EIC let you come back and join us again.
I'd love to. It's been fantastic. Thank you very much, Eric.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tom. See you later on. Ta-ta. Thank you. Fascinating stuff from Tom. So on the topic of decommissioning, we've heard from the regulator. We've heard from the industry influencers. We've heard from trade organizations. We've heard from the supply chain and the market analysts. We thought it'd be nice to finish with a view from an operator on this subject. So please welcome Donald Martin, Head of Decommissioning and Projects at Spirit Energy. Donald, hello. How are you?
Good afternoon, Eric. Great to see you.
It is great to see you. And as I saw you in the green room there, I thought at one point you had a duvet and a pillow and you were sleeping. We've kept you there for so long. Have you managed to stay awake?
No, definitely. Yeah, really enjoyed the session today.
Yeah, it was a lovely session. Any thoughts on what you've heard? Because we've had quite a sort of broad scope chat.
Yeah, it was interesting. I could really relate to Alan's comment around commitment. I think, from my perspective, you don't really get good at any skill in life without committing and getting stuck in and rolling the sleeves up. So I think that real sort of key message about, learning through doing from Alan, for me, really sort of resonated with, I suppose, my career within decommissioning and also the approach we've tried to adopt within Spirit.
Very, very good indeed. Now, very fitting that it's St Andrew's Day because it seems to be a major theme for the show. A big week for decommissioning in our sector last week down in St Andrews. I know you were there. What was your overall takeaway and impression from the couple of days down there?
Yeah, it was obviously a tremendous conference. It's we're probably a little bit biased because the team did quite well in one of the awards, but it's always an event that everyone looks forward to. In terms of the quality of the guest speakers, there's a real depth in the range of companies and organizations that are invited along and contribute. So it was really interesting. And I think the feedback that I heard from many of the folks that I spoke to was one of the most interesting sessions was in relation to the environmental options around decommissioning.
Right.
A lot of different companies I spoke to, they found that session was really memorable. So we had different presenters from Scottish Fishermen's Federation, Greenpeace, Insight, along with sort of Texas Park and Wildlife Department. So that was really interesting to hear the sort of polar opposite views. I suppose one of the key takeaways, from Spirit's perspective, was really around the performance challenge. And I think sort of Callum picked up on that sort of dilemma between, obviously wanting to do the work as efficiently as possible. And then there's been a lot of inflationary pressures within the supply chain, the increased demand and utilization, both within our own sector, but also internationally. And, I think that sort of key message that we heard is we need to continue to do things, smarter, more efficiently to sort of balance those two conflicting aspects out.
Now it must be you've touched on it, but I'm going to go back to it. I don't want to make you blush, right? But a particularly poignant session last week for you because, as you said, Spirit Energy being on the receiving end of the Operator Award for Excellence in Decommissioning. Being head of decommissioning, that must feel pretty good, right?
Oh, it was fantastic. Yeah, it was fantastic recognition from OE UK and the judging panel for the team. It's been our busiest year ever. So it was really good testament actually to the team's commitment, hard work, and the accomplishments they've had over the last 12 months. And particularly so, there were some really strong applicants this year. So to be selected as the winners was really pleasing for our own team. But also, I think more broadly, our ethos within Spirit in terms of our approach to decommissioning is operator light, supply chain heavy.
Right.
So I think the award really served as a mark of credibility for the great work that we've been doing together with our supply chain partners. So it was great to be able to share in the celebrations of that with the team and our suppliers. And it's probably fair to say that a number of our team had a good night.
Yeah, I bet. Absolutely, I bet it would have been wonderful. Wonderful. Was it actually? Was there a trophy? Was it a cup?
Yeah, it was actually. I'm sitting at my desk here.
Just happened to have it there.
Yeah,
drink from it, right?
We just we had a photo actually with the department yesterday. All the team that were involved within decommissioning.
Outstanding, and congratulations to all of you. Now, the award sort of preamble mentioned cost saving and a strong focus on collaboration, but you, in your response in interview, put it down to 3 strategic areas. With permission, is it all right if we just unpack some of those?
Sure, of course.
Yeah, so you put it down to 3 things: early investment, strategy of early investment, multi-asset campaigning, and supply chain collaboration. I wonder if we could take the first one to start with. How do you explain early investment? What's your sort of strategy and focus there?
Yeah, so I think the key thing within Spirit, effectively what we've done is we've organized our business strategy into 3 main pillars. So one is focusing on safe and efficient gas production,
right,
which generates the revenue. The second is looking forward towards the energy transition, and we're pursuing strategic opportunities there. And the third is really around meeting and de-risking our decommissioning obligations. And what that's provided us with the opportunity for is to secure early investment to effectively build area-wide campaigns in decommissioning.
Right.
When you look at the size of these projects and the scale, they can take multiple years. So one of the projects our team have been working on this year has been running for 6 years. So you can imagine in terms of, you might be looking 8, almost 10 years in advance. If you want to come up with a really good strategy in a way that you can combine projects and build efficiencies, you really need support from the board, from the shareholders, and also from all our area partners. And a big part of that as well is, I think, the work we need to do with the regulators. So
Right.
each of these projects are governed by a decommissioning program. So it's really important that we can work together in a really efficient way, so we can actually organise all of the decommissioning programs so they're ready to go at the right time.
Very good. Very good. And the multi-asset campaigning approach?
Yeah, so we've got a sort of general rule of thumb where what we look to do is combine multiple assets into major campaigns and build economies of scope and scale. And the rule of thumb is really we look for assets which have the same type of architecture. So they're going to require the same skills and services to decommission them. Assets that are maybe ceasing production round about the same time and are in the same geographical area. And what we look to do is then combine those and build them into an efficient and stable work program where you can learn from one project to the next.
Very good. And finally, I guess it's the most used term on this show for the 100 odd shows that we've done. Supply chain collaboration. I have a sense that you view this whole, it's not just a throwaway statement. You're looking into how to do supply chain collaboration differently and with value, right?
Definitely. I mean, I think what's been really fundamental to the successes that we've enjoyed has been the partnerships of the supply chain. And we mentioned that approach, operator light, supply chain heavy, to maybe put that into context. So this year has been our busiest year ever in decommissioning. I think last year, the UK CS as a whole invested about 1.5 billion in decommissioning. So this year, the Spirit team, our program's been about 10% of the actual outturn cost of the whole basin last year. And from our perspective, you could probably count on 4 hands the number of people that have been involved within our own team. But this year we've had something like 2,700 people involved across those projects, across every sort of part of the supply chain. And what we've looked to do, and I mentioned the collaboration, was build these campaigns. So we see the operator's position as being working together with the regulators to create the environment and the platform where we can build a sustainable program of work. And then what we're looking to do is to partner up with really high-performing supply chain companies and work together to sort of maximize the capability of their people, assets, and technology. And that's really been fundamental in the way that we've set up our team.
Very good. Thank you for that and outlining your sort of 3-pronged approach there. Many could be forgiven by just looking at the label of Spirit Energy and thinking, well, they're just a company that's just decommissioning assets. That's all they're doing. The much deeper Spirit Energy story is full of rich and diverse portfolio projects. And now you're decommissioning, but also projects as well. Could you just give us a wee 30-second elevator speech into the kind of other things that you and Spirit Energy are doing even further afield around the world?
Yeah, sure. I think the most obvious one within the team, we're not just here for end of life, we're here to extend life within the team, and we're really focused on life extension projects, but also in the energy transition. So we heard from Pauline earlier on about the opportunity for repurposing oil and gas fields as we look towards the energy transition. And Spirit have identified our North and South Morecambe Bay gas fields, which have huge potential as a carbon capture and storage facility. They're a short distance offshore from Blackpool, about 30 kilometres, and they have the potential to store up to a gigaton of carbon in their lifetime, which, you know, is a mind-boggling number. But to maybe put that into context, I think it's about 3 years of the entire UK CO2 emissions. So there's been a really strong push within the business looking to develop that opportunity. And of course, you know, decommissioning, safe and efficient decommissioning and selective repurposing of the infrastructure is a really important prerequisite to that future.
Very good indeed. For someone who is up to their eyes and beyond in not only decommissioning, but decommissioning awards, all of these things, I have a pretty horrible question for you at the end. You've watched decommissioning become a pipe dream, a reality, and you've watched evolution and things get better. What do you think's coming down the line in terms of allowing us to be more efficient, more effective, and get really into decommissioning? You know, the next wave. What do you think? Where do you think this is going to go?
Well, it's interesting. It was actually sort of reflecting on what Callum said earlier on about his own sort of career. About 2 decades ago, I got involved in one of the first major decommissioning projects in the UK, and I've worked in the sector ever since.
Wow.
And at that time, it was, you know, there was only one sort of major project ongoing, and I think, you know, it was really interesting last week at the conference just to look at the scale of activity and how much things have moved on. I think it's fair to say that, you know, we're probably in a position now where we've got a really mature supply chain. We've got tremendous capability out there. It's a great time to be procuring decommissioning services, and I'm sure that'll continue. I think for me, the key thing is really about the sort of the mindset we approach decommissioning. So ultimately, decommissioning, it's our legacy and our future, in terms of, you know, what we leave behind from the oil and gas industry. You know, and I think, you know, how we decide as an industry to sort of to round off the lifetime of the oil and gas fields over the next few decades is going to be really, really important. So I think there's a lot to do with the motivation of why people want to get involved in these projects. It's really important work that we do to help, you know, protect the environment for the future. And I think, you know, when people ask about, you know, why would you want to get involved in decommissioning, I think this is an area certainly I've got a lot of passion for, and I see that across our own team and across all of the companies involved. So I think that mindset around being able to make a real difference, you know, and having real pride in the work, and I think that in itself can be a massive vehicle to drive performance, wanting to do things for the right reason.
Brilliant, brilliant. It's been a joy to get a little snippet insight into the mindset, the view from the operator. Thank you so much for offering up the time to be part of this today with all of our other guests. It's been a joy. If you wish to connect with Donald and reach out and extend the conversation, please do. I'm sure he would love it, especially if you've got something interesting to show him that's going to make his life easier or make things more efficient. For now, Donald, thank you very much. Brilliant.
Thanks, Eric.
We will see you
Great
again.
to see you.
Thanks a lot. Brilliant, brilliant stuff. Well, wasn't that insightful? Thanks to Donald and all our guests today on the subject of decommissioning, or Decom Special. Tomorrow we are launching, because this is the very end of the month, we are launching the next edition of OGV Energy magazine. So keep your eyes peeled for our December edition on risk and safety management. That will be hitting the shelves tomorrow and hitting an office reception near you. So keep your eye out for that. Also in January, we are issuing our well management special. And Dan, who is currently working with the team to put this together, has reminded me that our well management special, we still are on the lookout for a few final contributions for this one. So if you're sitting out there and you're in the wells management space and you think, I'd like to be in that edition of the magazine, and maybe even on the Wells Management show that we do that in that January, get in touch with Dan Hyland, daniel.hyland@ogvenergy.co.uk. It's in orange, the little box at the bottom there. So that's a call for final contributions for our Wells Management magazine. This has been a joy to do. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to all of our speakers. Thanks to everyone for being part of this today. It's about our community, and we've seen the strength of the community in the chat and with our guests today. We appreciate you taking your time to be with us. It's very special. It's about the community. It's about the energy community. We are going to be back with you in January. We're taking a wee break over Christmas for the Wells Management show, and it's already hotting up. Have a great Christmas and New Year, and we hope you get a good break, and maybe we'll see you at the OGV Energy Christmas quiz. Thanks for joining us again. Sorry for running over in time, and we'll see you at the next OGV Energy Live.